Hey crafty people, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. Over the years I've dabbled in most types of crafting, although for the past decade or so I've been doing primarily card making and mixed media art. I've recently embarked on a junk journaling journey that I hope you'll join me on. So today we're going to work on decorating our Christmas tag shape booklet. I'll have a link to my Christmas in July playlist below, which will have a link to the video where I assembled the tag shaped booklet. Let's get crafting. So I have finished decorating our tag shape booklet, and I have recorded all of the process for decorating it. But if I were to post all of that, it would be like 3 hours long. So what I'm going to do is a flip through, and then I'm going to include, when we get to the particular bits that I think might have useful information and is more than just me gluing stuff down, I will add in the clips of those processes that I did. So here's the front cover. This is a die by Elizabeth Craft Designs that I die cut out of white cardstock and then coffee dyed. And then this is a Cheery Lynn Designs doily die that I believe has been discontinued, unfortunately. And as I mentioned when I was assembling it, I did put some lace along the edge here to cover up the fact that my fabric tape wasn't exactly straight. So this is one of the clusters we made at the beginning of July in our cluster booklet, and this is one of the bits and bobs. Over here, this is one of the Tim Holtz paper dolls, and I've glazed her outfit using distress embossing glaze. I'm going to show you that process later on when we get to this lady over here. And these are a couple of the bits and bobs. And they started out as white from white cardstock, and I just used a little tea dye distress ink to darken those up a bit. These are a bunch of digitals. So I cut out the little frame and then put the little cutie inside. And there's a close-up of that. And she just barely fit, so I inked around her to make sure if any white poked out, it would be disguised by the inking. And then in here, we've got a tag, and I backed it with some coffee dyed paper. And this is just some paper from my stash, and then these two are printables. And I also created my own whale tab shaped tab for this. I'll show you how I did that now. And then I think I'm going to take a scrap bit of this paper and a 1.5 inch circle punch. We'll see if there's enough. I think just enough. Just barely enough. And we're gonna fold it in half. And I'm gonna use my little notch punch and there we go. Oh, that's needs a little bit more taken out. It's a little bit more in line. And I'm just going to attach this up here, and I think I'm going to kind of cut off the pointiness of those corners. And those. So yeah, you can always experiment with the punches you have to create different kinds of tabs for your tags. If you don't have like the whale tab punch. So I'm just going to attach that guy there. So he's gonna go into
this pocket right here.
Now this is a leftover Tim Holtz Chapter 3 specimen slide die cut from last year that I used for this. And these are a bunch of die cuts. And this, because I show you how I handle all of the die cuts and such, I will now show you the video for doing this page.
Now for this page, I grabbed this. It is leftover from a project I was doing last year. And it's Chapter 3 specimen slide, Sizzix die. I used watercolor paper and Lumberjack Plaid and one of the Distress Mica sprays to color the paper. But I don't remember what color it is. It's from one of the seasonal collections. And then this is from one of the digitals. I don't even remember. I printed out and bought so many Christmas digitals, I can't even keep track of them. So I will definitely leave you a list of all of them below. I'm just gonna stick our little birdie on. Then I'm gonna glue this closed. I'm gonna ink my edges with Lumberjack Plaid. Because I did this out of a watercolor cardstock, it's a thicker cardstock, so I've got a little bit of cracking going on where it's folded over. So I'm gonna pay special attention to that to make sure I get that inked. And actually, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking I want to go with a little bit of brown in there as well. So I'm gonna grab my vintage photo and ink those edges up as well with some brown. Now, you can see the little white spots. There are a variety of options you have for what to do about those. You can punch them out and put some string in there. You can leave them as is and use some stickles to fill in the hole. What I'm going to do is I'm going to punch them out and use some small brads I have. So I'm going to use my Tin of Tentacled brads. Now, for brads on the end, kind of like that, you don't have to open up your legs so that they're like, you know, usually when you open a brad, you open it up like this. Well, that's going to end up showing off the side. You can twist your brad legs. You can even open them both in one direction. So you just want to make sure your feet don't show. All right, so that's going to go there. And I've got some die cut greenery that I'm going to stick underneath. And I've got that. And this piece, now this piece I'm going to color. And then I've got these pine cones. I think the pine cones are a memory box. I'll list it down below. These I know are a Sizzix greenery, like Christmas greenery set. So with the memory box pine cones, there are holes for stenciling. And actually, if you run them through a second time, changing out the plate to ones designed for embossing, you can actually emboss these guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out walnut stain because I want to go a little bit darker, and I am just going to stencil these guys so that they look a little more pine coney. So there, that's what they look like stenciled. And I'm going to add some vintage photo around the edges to give them a little bit more life. And do a little in the middle. So this is a great tip. If you've got die cut shapes and you're thinking they're looking a little flat, what you can do is bring in some ink, even when you die cut out of color cardstock. Like for this leaf, I am actually going to pull in a little bit of Rustic Wilderness and possibly a little vintage photo to give it a little bit more life, so that it's not so one-dimensional color-wise. So yeah, that just gives it a little bit more depth than if you just leave it a single solid color. Now for this guy, I'm actually just grabbing a water brush, mostly because I had it handy and it's got water in it. Yes. And I smushed some ink off to the side that you can't see onto my mat. And I'm going to use that to just paint on color on these leaves. So if you don't want to die cut something out of color cardstock, you just die cut it out of plain, you can go in and just use your distress inks to paint on some color. And now I'm going to grab some Lumberjack Plaid and smush it on my table. And paint that on to our berries. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was drifting off screen. And I'm just off to the side taking a paper towel and kind of cleaning off the ink. And I'm actually going to pick up some of this brown that I have on here, the vintage photo, and add that to the branch. So there we go. That's our berry branch. So I am going to take my art glitter glue and my tweezers and apply these so that they're poking out from underneath the slide. Now for something like this where you've got a lot of little thin branches, you're going to want to have a paper towel nearby to sop up all of the excess glue, because there's going to be excess glue. So I'm just going to push it down with a paper towel and at the same time dab off our excess glue. And our berries, which are a little damp, I'm gonna hit those with my heat tool just to dry them. And the reason I dried it is because when it's wet, it's a little easier to tear, so I don't want to risk damaging our piece. That's gonna go like that. Press that down. Just making sure I'm, yep, still on the correct side. And now let's tuck in some pine cones. There, and now we can add our specimen slide. Just make sure before you glue it down that all the feet for your brads are out of the way and aren't going to show. And we're just going to stick that down and press it for a second till it catches.
And then in this side pocket, we have got this lovely lady who is a Tim Holtz paper doll, and I used Distress Embossing Glaze in Rustic Wilderness and Fired Brick to color her outfit. And I'm going to show you how I did that now.
So I've grabbed a piece of scrap of coffee dyed paper, because we're going to attach all of this to the coffee dyed paper to give it some more strength and stability. This is one of the Tim Holtz people from the Christmas pack, and I want to bring in some color. So what I've got is grabbing a scratch piece of paper, because I'm going to pull out some Distress Embossing Glaze, and this is Rustic Wilderness, and fingers crossed this is going to work on here. I'm a little concerned that it might be dark, but if you don't know, Distress Embossing Glaze is translucent, so you will see the color below. And I've got a Distress Embossing marker or pen, and I am just going to do, and I'm going to do her in sections. Her coat, I want to be green. Do this over a piece of paper so I can dump the embossing glaze back in the tin. Should have gotten this open before I started coloring her, but it's still shiny. We're okay. I have a bunch of little scoops, which is what I was hunting for. And I'm just going to use that so that I get it where I want it. Tap off the excess, and there are a few spots I missed. I'm not going to try and go back and do that now because it's just going to get embossing powder on my pen. But I can do that afterwards. I can come back, heat emboss it, and then go in and fill in any blank spots. I'm going to do the rest of her coat. Again, going to add the embossing powder or glaze. Put the glaze back in the container. The top back on this because you don't want to pull out your heat gun and accidentally heat your glaze in the container and ruin it. Set that aside. Grab my tweezers again so that I can hold on to this and emboss, and grab my embossing gun and emboss it. Oh, I like how that came out. Okay, so we're going to just go back in and fill in the spots we missed once it is cooled. I'm going to heat it again, and I'm going to just turn to the side so I don't have to clean that up. There are just a couple more spots that I want to go back in and touch up, like along here, just to make sure she's fully covered. So again, anywhere looks like we don't have embossing glaze, just going to go back and touch up. And the tapping on the back gets it to come off of spots you don't want it. And see, I've got some flecks on her skirt. So if you just take a very soft brush, you can go in and brush off any excess that gets somewhere you don't want it. And I'm just going to go ahead and emboss this. So there she is in her lovely green coat. And I think I want to do her skirt in red. And I'm going to repeat the same process just on her skirt to get her looking all snazzy for Christmas. I love how she came out. I am so happy I did this. Alrighty, so we are going to start by attaching this piece to our coffee dyed paper, and it's just going to add a little bit more stability. Like, it's a little flimsy for something that's going to get pulled in and out of pockets. But I'm not going to cut it out yet because I want to reinforce her a little bit. So I want to stick her on as well. And so we're going to start with what she's sitting on, which is this little guy here. It should go about there. I'm going to ink my edges. I'm also going to add this stamped bit here, but I don't like how white it is, so I'm going to ink that. And that's the nice thing when you stamp a bunch of random bits and bobs. You can always come back and add some ink if they're too white for what you're working on. That works a lot better, but I also think I want to ink the edges a little darker maybe. I think in addition to the brown, I'm going to bring some green in for the edges. Please excuse my dog groaning in the background. He has a hard life. It's so tough to be a dog. So we're gonna position her where we want her. And I am gonna use a paper clip to hold her in place. So I can then place this piece so it looks like she is sitting on it. And I'm gonna use my Barely Arts glue because that'll give me a little bit more wiggle time than my art glitter glue. Don't think I want it white, but I don't want vintage photo. That's too dark, so I'm gonna grab some tea dye. And because I've been using a darker color with my brush, and I really want this to be lighter, I'm gonna spray a little water on a cloth, take my brush and run it through that, and rub it off on here so it's still nice and dry. It's a good way to clean off your brushes if you've been using a dark color without getting them too wet so that they're useless. And I'm just gonna go in and just knock it back a little bit from bright white. So yeah, you can see the difference between the two, and this is now not bright white. So I think I'll like that sitting behind her better. So yep, we're gonna stick that down. And again, just make sure she's positioned how we want her positioned. I think I may have shifted her a little. And then I have one more piece to add on over here, which I should have done underneath the postcard, but it is too late now. And that I actually think I am gonna leave white. I think I like having a little pop of white down there. And this is just half of a doily die, and the die's by Cheery Lynn Designs, and I believe it's been discontinued. All right, and now we can add our lovely lady. Now we're just gonna cut her out. I think I may, yep, just so that that's not white. I'm just gonna add a little bit of this cut off on the top there to cover up the top of her head because I wasn't paying attention and didn't line it up so that it would cover her head. While that is drying, I'm gonna go ahead and round the corners on the side that's going into our pocket. So there we go, and that's gonna go in our pocket.
On this side, I ended up adding a little bit of lace to the back because I didn't like how it looked so much sticking out, but I really like from the front seeing her peek out. This is a digital pocket, so I just made the pocket, stuck a tag inside it. And this is an idea for how you can take printables and change their look. And I'm going to show you what I did for this now.
For this one, I've got from one of the digital kits, it's actually a pocket. So I've already gone ahead and scored and folded the pieces to create the pocket. And I'm going to ink the edges. Apply glue. And stick it down. this is from one of the kits, and it's for making an advent calendar. So it's got all of the numbers on the little circles. So I'm just going to cover that up, and I'm going to use this little piece. So that's going to get glued down over the 8, and that's going to get glued down over here. And I feel like it needs something else I may want to add is a little bit of lace. And so I'm going to add this scrap piece, and I'm going to mark it with a pencil to trim off the bottom. Going to ink all of our edges, glue it down, and add a little bit of lace on top of that. And for the lace, I'm going to use Fabri-Tac to glue it down. And I'm just going to apply a little on here. Grab my piece of lace and my little silicone spatula. Use that to stick the lace down. Now once it dries, I'm going to come in and trim off the excess lace at the top. And then I'm going to add that right there.
Some more printables, some more of our bits and bobs. This is a die cut, and I just added a gem to the center for the flower, and I did add a little bit of Inca gold to bring out some gold accents on this one. This is a Tim Holtz Sizzix die. It's the crochet die, I believe, and these are more of our bits and bobs from the beginning of July in our Christmas in July series. I will put a link down below to the playlist of all my Christmas in July videos if you want to go back and see how I did any of the things, how I did the bits and bobs and such. Basically just glued some printables. This is another Elizabeth Craft Design doily die that I cut out of white cardstock. Got another tag in the top pocket, and so I layered some printables, and this is an Artymaze printable. Backed it with some coffee dyed paper, and then did a bunch of die cuts. Now because this was a tag, I wanted to keep the center of my poinsettia flat, so I just used some gold pen for that. And this piece might look familiar. It was left over from the arched window Christmas card I did, and that'll be part of the playlist linked below. Again, just a combination of doily dies, printables, and our bits and bobs from the beginning of July. Now this printable is, I believe, an Artymaze printable, and I added some color to her outfit, and I'm going to show you how I did that now.
For this little cutie, I think I'm going to trim her down a little bit, and I'm going to use my We Are Memory Keepers Stub and Deco Punch, and use the Deco Punch on the corners, which gives us that lovely shape. And I'm going to ink around her edges because, yeah, I don't know if you can see, I didn't quite cut it exactly perfect on the one side. So that's the benefit of inking edges, is you can take care of white bits that are showing that you don't want showing. But you do not have to ink edges. That's completely up to you. Now, I want to add a little color to this little cutie here. So I've pulled out some colored pencils, and I've grabbed Prismacolor Grass Green, and it's PC909. And I am just going to add a little color to her outfit, and I'm just gonna press fairly lightly. And now I'm grabbing Caran d'Ache full blender, and I'm gonna use that to blend out my pencil marks. And then I'm going to add some green down here for the rest of our outfit. And now I want to grab red for the trim. And for that I've grabbed Prismacolor Crimson Red, and it's PC924. I'm just going to go in and add a little red for the trim. And the reason I use the blending tool is, I don't know if you can see how well you can see, but there are usually faint little lines from coloring with the color pencil, and I like to blend those out. There we go. And I am going to add her and this ticket that was a printable and a couple of stamps right there, and I'm going to use art glitter glue to stick it all down. Actually, looking at this, I think I want to add a poinsettia down there. All right, I'm going to just ink. All right, there we go. That spread is done.
And again, bits and bobs and printables. And this is the bits and bobs that I believe was white that I inked with either Vintage Photo or Tea-Dye Distress ink. Another, I believe, printable with some printable stamps. And again, on this one I backed with a different printable. And again, printables, bits and bobs. This is part of this background, but I stamped the number 5 on it. So I used a bunch of stamps to stamp on this postcard. So the barcode bit at the bottom is a stamp, and I can't remember. I think it's a Tim Holtz stamp set. I will list it below if I can find it. This, I believe, is from the Poinsettia Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous stamp set. The wavy lines is Darkroom Door. I think Merry Mail is the name of it. And I don't remember which Tim Holtz stamp set that number 5 is from. And added a printable there and more of our bits and bobs. Now this little cutie I did something a little different with for glazing because I was a little concerned her coat on the paper doll was a bit darker than the other ones that I had glazed. So I'm going to show you what I did for that.
All right, so I want to glaze her outfit as well, but I'm a little concerned because of how dark it is, whether the glaze will actually show up. So what I'm going to do is I've got a little bit of white gesso that I've watered down. And I'm just going to apply a thin coat of the watered down white gesso over her coat to lighten it up a little bit and hopefully get it so that the glaze is going to show. I'm doing my best not to leave too much streaky paintbrush strokes in what I'm coloring. And I went with just a very light coat because I don't want to like completely white out the piece. I just want to lighten it up so that the glaze will show up when I add it. And you can see a couple buttons on her. So I think I'm gonna grab fossilized amber to do just the buttons. Again, I'm going to take a soft brush and clear it off where I don't want it. And you definitely need to make sure your gesso is dry before you do this step. Okay, so she's got her buttons, and now I'm going to go and do the rest of her coat in red. All right, so I went ahead and did the rest of her outfit and added green for the trim.
Now on these 2 pages, I kept it fairly simple and just added these printables because I really love the look of those trees. And we've got another tag stuck in here. And for this one, I used a combination of the crochet die and my Cheery Lynn Doily die. And this time I cut them out of colored cardstock and just added those on. Now this was from the cluster booklet we created as part of our bits and bobs and cluster booklet. That video's in the playlist. So I just cut that out of the booklet and attached it. And here's another. This is a bubble dyed with coffee, I believe, possibly tea. And it was a name tag left over from a conference, and I just backed it with a printable and added some bits and bobs, a hexagon die cut out of a printable, and then this is from an Artymaze printable. And here we've got another of the Distress Embossing Glazed paper doll. This was cut out using a Elizabeth Craft Design Doily die. And I inked it with Lumberjack Plaid and then sprinkled some water on it to get the cool water droplet effect. And again, more die cuts, printables, bits and bobs. So these are all tag shaped printables that I thought it would be kind of cute to layer a bunch of tags on each other for this page. And then this is the Elizabeth Craft Designs Hole Reinforcer #1 die set, and I cut it out of a scrap bit of a printable. Kept this guy pretty simple with just a couple printables glued on. And of course, you know, I'm a dog mom, so I have to have some Christmas puppy dogs. These are all from Festive Frolic by Shabby Debbie Doodah. And I attached stuff, and this is Tim Holtz die that I die cut out of coffee dyed paper and then inked on the edges. And when I attached this, so I printed this out on copy paper, so it's fairly thin, and I didn't want to have to worry about my baker's twine ripping through the hole, so I just glued everything down. I forget which printable this is from, but this is a Shabby Debbie Doodah printable that has like a reindeer in the center, so this is another idea for ways you can alter the look of like ephemera in your printables. I just stuck my doggies over top. And then I've got a dog tag that's not quite finished. I feel like there needs to be something in there, but I don't know what yet. Again, just layering up a bunch of printables and some bits and bobs. Same thing over here. I just added a little bit of lace, and this started out as white. And then I just used my dauber and some Lumberjack Plaid to color it red. And that's it. That's all there is. So there's our finished decorated tag-shaped booklet. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the things that let YouTube know you enjoyed a video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. If there are any pages in here that you want to see how I created them and I haven't included them in this video, leave me a comment down below letting me know, and I'll go back and post that, because I did film pretty much everything when I was putting this together. Thanks for joining me, and happy crafting!